The receptionist's voice carries across the crowded VIA waiting room like a slap. "Sorry, old man, but your appointment was 20 minutes ago, and we're booked solid now. You'll have to come back next week." 83-year-old Frank Morrison sits, hunched in his wheelchair, arthritic fingers trembling as they brush against the small velvet box, hidden deep in his jacket pocket, while dozens of younger patients stare and whisper about the frail old man holding up their day. What happens next will leave you speechless and remind you why we should never judge a book by its cover. If stories like Frank's touch your heart, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments below about a time when someone surprised you with their hidden strength. Now, let me tell me what happened when someone finally noticed what Frank was hiding in that pocket. Frank Morrison had been waiting since 7 in the morning. His nephew dropped him off early because that was the only time he could get away from work. Frank didn't mind waiting. At 83, he had learned patience the hard way. His hands shook as he tried to fill out the same forms he'd completed dozens of times before. The arthritis made writing almost impossible now. Each letter looked like a child's scribble. He kept his head down, hoping no one would notice how long it took him to write his own name. The waiting room filled up fast. Young veterans with missing limbs, middle-aged men with haunted eyes, women in uniform who looked like they hadn't slept in weeks. All of them had appointments after 9 o'clock. All of them got called before Frank Dodd when he finally worked up the courage to approach the desk again. The receptionist barely looked up from her computer screen. She was maybe 30 years old with bright pink nails that clicked against the keyboard. "Listen, sir," she said without making eye contact. "You were supposed to be here at 8:30. It's almost 10 now. Dr. Martinez is completely booked for the rest of the day." Frank's voice came out as barely a whisper. "I've been here since 7. My nephew can't come back until 5. "That's not my problem," she snapped. "You should have been on time." A man in his 40s wearing a baseball cap looked up from his phone. "What's the holdup over there?" Old guy missed his appointment. The receptionist announced loud enough for half the room to hear. Now he wants special treatment. Several people turned to stare. Frank felt his face burn with shame. He gripped his wheelchair handles tighter, trying to steady his shaking hands. "Ma single quotes am." He tried again, his voice cracking. "I really need to see the doctor today. My medication ran out yesterday." And the receptionist cut him off with an exaggerated sigh. "Sir, I don't make the rules. You'll have to reschedule." A woman sitting nearby rolled her eyes. "Some people think the world revolves around them," she muttered to her friend. Frank felt tears building behind his eyes. He reached into his jacket pocket and touched the small velvet box. Inside was his silver star. He'd carried it everywhere for 60 years, but he'd never shown it to anyone. Not even his late wife knew he had it. The baseball cap man stood up and walked over. "Look, buddy," he said, pointing at Frank. "We've all been waiting here too. You can't just cut in line because you're old." "I'm not trying to cut in line," Frank whispered. "I was here first. Yeah, right?" The man laughed. "I saw you roll in here 20 minutes ago." Frank's hands trembled harder. "I've been here since 7. He repeated. The receptionist looked annoyed now. "Sir, you need to move away from my desk. You're holding up other patients." More people were staring now. Frank felt like everyone in the room was judging him. A few younger veterans shook their heads in disgust. One woman whispered to her husband about entitled old people. Frank started to back his wheelchair away from the desk when his jacket pocket caught on the armrest. The velvet box tumbled out and hit the floor with a soft thud. The room went quiet. For a moment, the box had opened when it fell, and the silver star lay gleaming on the dirty linoleum floor. A man in his 60s who had been sitting in the corner slowly stood up. He walked over and carefully picked up the medal. His own hands was shaking as he read the inscription. "Silver Star," he said in a voice that carried across the silent room. "For gallantry in action against an enemy of the United States." Frank reached for the medal with tears streaming down his face. "Please," he whispered, "give it back." The older man looked at the date on the medal. Vietnam, 1968. He looked at Frank with new eyes. "What unit?" "1st Infantry Division," Frank said so quietly that people had to lean forward to hear him. "The big red one?" The man said with respect. "I was 25th Infantry. We worked together in CUG. The baseball cap man looked confused. "What's going on?" The older veteran turned to face the room. "This man earned the Silver Star in Vietnam. You know what that means?" "It means he risked his life to save other soldiers. While we were all back home watching TV and going to school, he was in the jungle getting shot at so we could sleep safe at night." The receptionist finally looked up from her computer. Her face had gone pale. Frank accepted his medal back with shaking hands. He tried to put it back in the box, but his arthritis made it almost impossible. The older veteran helped him close it gently. "What happened over there?" The veteran asked softly. Frank wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "My platoon got ambushed near Saigon. I was just a kid, 19 years old. We lost radio contact, and the enemy had us pinned down behind some rice paddies. 3 of my buddies were wounded bad and couldn't move. The room was completely silent now. Even the receptionist had stopped typing. I crawled out there 3 times to drag them back." Frank continued. "Got shot in the leg on the 2nd trip. Took shrapnel in my back on the 3rd. But I got them all out alive." His voice broke a little. 2 of them made it home. Tommy Rodriguez and Billy Chun. They both got married and had kids. Billy sent me Christmas cards every year until he passed 5 years ago. The baseball cap man was staring at the floor now. He looked ashamed. "What about the 3rd one?" The older veteran asked. Frank smiled through his tears. "Jackie Washington. He lost his leg, but he became a teacher back in Detroit. He used to call me every Veterans Day to say thank you. His daughter still sends me pictures of her kids. Jackie always said I gave him 40 extra years of life." The woman who had complained about entitled old people had tears in her eyes now. She got up and walked over to Frank. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry for what I said." The receptionist stood up behind her desk. "Mr. Morrison," she said, her voice completely different now. "Let me see what I can do about getting you in with Dr. Martinez today." "That's not necessary," Frank said. "I can. Wait until next week." "No, sir," the older veteran said firmly. "You've waited long enough." The receptionist picked up her phone and made a call. "Dr. Martinez," she said, "I know your book's solid, but we have a Silver Star recipient here who really needs to be seen today. His name is Frank Morrison." She listened for a moment, then hung up. "He'll see you in 10 minutes, she said. The baseball cap man walked over to Frank's wheelchair. "Sir," he said, "I owe you an apology and a thank you. My dad served in Vietnam too. He never made it home." Frank reached out and touched the man's arm. "What was his name?" "Michael Torres. He was with the 101st Airborne." Frank nodded. "Screaming Eagles. Good unit. Your father was a brave man." The man's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you for saying that." When Dr. Martinez called Frank's name, the entire waiting room stood up. Every single person was on their feet as Frank rolled past them toward the doctor's office. The older veteran walked alongside the wheelchair. "After you're done here," he said, "I'd like to buy you lunch. I want to hear more about Saint-J." Frank smiled for the first time all day. "I'd like that." As they reached the doctor's office, Frank turned to look back at the waiting room. The receptionist gave him a small wave. The baseball cap man nodded respectfully. The woman who had insulted him earlier was still wiping tears from her eyes. Frank had carried that Silver Star in his pocket for 60 years. never showing it to anyone. He thought it would make him look like he was bragging. But today, he learned something important. Sometimes people need to see who you really are. Sometimes they need to remember that heroes don't always look like what they expect. Sometimes they're just quiet old men in wheelchairs, carrying their stories in their pockets, waiting patiently for someone to notice that they matter too. Dr. Martinez spent extra time with Frank that day. He refilled all his medications and scheduled follow-up appointments. As Frank left the office, the doctor shook his hand. Thank you for your service, Mr. Morrison, and thank you for reminding us all what courage looks like. Frank wheeled himself back through the waiting room, past all the people who now saw him differently. The older veteran was waiting by the door, ready to keep his promise about lunch. As they left the building together, Frank touched his pocket where the silver star rested safely in its velvet box. He thought about Tommy Rodriguez and Billy Chun and Jackie Washington. He thought about all the heroes he'd known who never got the recognition they deserved. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. Maybe it was time to let people see that even quiet old men in wheelchairs have stories worth telling. Maybe it was time to remember that respect isn't something you have to earn twice. The sun felt warm on Frank's face as they headed toward the packing lot. For the first time in years, he wasn't ashamed of being old. He wasn't ashamed of needing help. He was proud of who he was and what he'd done, and that